Okay, let's dive right in.
We have a really fascinating, and I have to say, incredibly timely set of sources today.
Timely is the word. We're looking at this interception of high-stakes geopolitics.
The collapse of a very long-standing regime, and this is the really critical part, the predictive power of advanced machine learning.
Right. And all of it, every single thread pivots around one just explosive event.
The recent capture of Venezuelan de facto President Nicolas Maduro by U.S. forces?
But this isn't just a news recap. I mean, if you're listening, you already know that happened.
Not at all. We're doing a deep dive into a real-time account of an intelligence analysis that was happening, just as the dust was settling. The capture itself was around January 3rd, 2026.
And the analysis we're looking at suggests that this highly publicized capture, it wasn't a simple military extraction.
The analysis points to something far more complex, a multi-layered betrayal.
A hyper-sophisticated double cross.
That's what the analytic pipeline called it. It's known as the Cabello Sting operation, or, and I love this name,
The Maduro Gambit.
exactly.
Maduro Gambit. The name itself implies a level of chess, at the absolute highest level.
It does.
So our mission today really is to trace how this extraordinary prediction came to be. It was generated by this proprietary machine learning tech, and we need to understand what it means.
The implications are huge, not just for Venezuela, but for these alleged deep networks that are supposedly operating in both Venezuela and inside the U.S. government.
We're basically looking at predictive counterintelligence in action.
And to really get our heads around this, we have to start with the source itself. We have to ground you, the listener, in the specific context.
Okay, so what are we looking at?
We're analyzing a video recording. It was made by a man named Reinaldo J. Aguiar Marcano. And the timestamp is absolutely key to all of this.
Why is that?
Because it tells you how immediate this all is. The recording is from January 6, 2026, at 4:37 p.m. U.S. Central Time.
So just 3 days after Maduro was captured.
Exactly. Marcano isn't looking back on history here. He's in the thick of it, analyzing the fallout and running these incredibly sophisticated intelligence scenarios almost instantaneously.
That kind of real-time pressure, it must dictate the nature of the information itself.
It does, and he's very clear about this. He emphasizes over and over that this is a predictive analysis.
Yeah.
It's an inference based on scenario modeling, not, a confirmed fact.
He actually says he's recording a sequence of events in case this turns out to be the case. He's hedging.
He has to. But the thing is, if this prediction is even partially true, the implications for domestic U.S. politics, for international relations, they're just seismic.
Absolutely seismic. And that's before you even consider the personal stakes for the man who's delivering this information.
Indeed. We really can't understand the gravity of the prediction without first understanding Marcano's personal situation.
He has put himself, directly on the firing line.
And the details he gives about his own environment, they aren't random. They're strategic clues about the surveillance context he believes he's living in.
Okay, so let's dive into that first. Segment 1, the whistleblower's position and safety concerns. There's this almost obsessive level of geographical detail right at the start.
He's recording from his home, and he gives the full address, 2302 Britton Ridge Drive, Katy, Texas, 77494.
And you have to ask yourself, why would a global intelligence analyst do that? Why broadcast your exact location to the world?
Because in this world, in intelligence analysis, geography is almost never an accident. It's about establishing operational proximity.
Proximity to what?
To power.
Yeah.
He doesn't just give his address. In the very next breath, he links it to a major figure in the U.S. national security establishment.
Right. He says his house is just 300 feet away from the residence of Mr. Robert Mueller.
The former director of the FBI.
That proximity it's staggering. It completely changes the lens you're looking through.
It does. Because later on, Marcano is going to imply that Mueller's one of these U.S. players, one of these high-level assets who is potentially involved in the very network that staged this capture.
So what he's doing it's incredibly strategic. By placing himself right next to a figure like that, a figure who he implies might be under surveillance himself.
Right, by the very agencies we're going to talk about, the FBI, the CIA, the DEA, the ones who execute this sting. He's trying to signal two things.
What are they?
First, he's establishing his closeness to the network's alleged center of operations inside the U.S. He's saying, I'm right here. I'm at the nexus.
And second,
he's creating a kind of de facto shield for himself. He's basically arguing that if anything happens to him, if he gets harmed, The U.S. intelligence agencies running this counter-operation will know immediately who is responsible.
Because he's operating inside what they would consider a known surveillance envelope.
Precisely. It turns a simple video recording into a message that's being sent from inside a highly monitored, active operational zone.
And the personal stakes aren't just theoretical. He makes that clear with his actions right before he even hits record.
Yes. He states he is recording the video directly onto his computer, and his plan is to upload it immediately before he leaves the house.
It's a dead man's switch, essentially.
It's a kill switch mechanism. He's operating under what he clearly perceives as extreme duress.
He explains it directly. He says, I've learned through experience that if I record something that they feel is too dangerous for them, they might try to harm me.
So his logic is he can't leave until the video is posted, so that, in his words, if they harm me, people will find it. It just paints this vivid picture of a man who genuinely believes the information he has is lethally dangerous.
Not just because it's sensitive, but because he believes it's accurate.
Accurate and capable of completely dismantling the network structure of his adversaries.
Okay, but let's be critical here for a moment. As analysts, we have to be. Isn't it a little, analytically convenient?
How so?
The whistleblower who claims his technology can destroy them also wants us to believe his life is in constant imminent danger. How do we separate genuine threat assessment from potential, self-aggrandizement?
That is always the essential challenge when you're dealing with a single, highly motivated source like this. It's a fair question.
So how does he back it up?
Well, he doesn't just state the fear. He backs it up with specific references to his published work, which he claims is the actual source of the network's desperation.
These books he mentioned.
Exactly. He says he published a series of books using a proprietary ranking system. And the way he describes the engine behind it is, well, it's something else.
He calls it an atomic or nuclear algorithm.
Right. So the threat level he's describing is validated, in his view, by the success of this algorithm, not just by his personal opinion of the danger.
Let's unpack that for a minute. An atomic algorithm, that kind of terminology, it implies not just precision, but overwhelming power, the ability to break a system down to its core components.
Like nuclear fission.
Yeah.
Chain reaction.
So how does he claim this thing actually functions in a counterintelligence context?
He doesn't give us the source code, obviously, but we can deduce its function from what he says the publications target. A system described as nuclear is probably not just a simple database search. It's more likely operating on a principle of critical mass. It's probably combining multiple, seemingly disconnected data sets.
To find what?
To identify behavioral clustering, financial anomalies, geospatial relationships, all the things that point to deep, non-obvious connections between people.
So if we were to try and architect how something like this might work, what would the layers be?
Okay, so just hypothesizing here. You could imagine 3 key layers. The first would be a data fusion layer. It would ingest just vast, disparate streams of information, global travel records, bulk financial transactions, especially those just below the reporting thresholds, communication metadata, public records like property deeds, shell corporation filings, all of it.
Okay, so it sucks in all the data. What's the next layer?
The network graphing layer. And this is the clever part. It's not looking for known connections like person A called person B.
It's looking for something else.
It's looking for behavioral synchronization. So if 3 individuals, say one in Katy, one in Florida, and one in Ohio, have these weirdly synchronistic travel patterns.
Like they're never in the same place, but they move in a pattern.
Exactly. Or they share offshore accounts through 3 degrees of separation. Or they have similar opaque corporate structures. The algorithm flags that synchronization as a potential hidden network.
And the third layer, the atomic part.
That would be the predictive ranking layer. This is where the machine learning comes in. It assigns a weight or a rank to each person in that network graph based on their structural importance.
So it's identifying the vulnerabilities.
Precisely. The elite agents he talks about aren't necessarily the people at the top. They're the people whose removal would cause the entire network to suffer maximum systemic shock.
The linchpins, the ones that start the chain reaction.
That's the nuclear analogy.
And if you have a tool that can do that,
Right.
yeah, that would absolutely explain the existential threat level Marcano feels he's under.
And he gets very specific about the publications themselves. He says they have black covers, they're color-coded, and they're geographically targeted.
He names the regions: the European Union, Houston, Katy, Florida, Ohio, and Canada.
Which confirms that the algorithm's output isn't just theoretical data. It's highly actionable intelligence, pinpointing high-value targets across multiple international jurisdictions.
So publishing these books is the act of weaponizing the data.
He's using publicly available information, processed by his specialized technology, to disrupt what he claims is a covert global network.
And this is where his threat assessment gets its validation. It's not just him saying it.
Right. This is critical. He notes that his informant, who he says operates within the network, confirmed to him that the ranking system used in these books can destroy them.
So that's confirmation from the adversary.
It's confirmation from inside the wire that their operational integrity is compromised. This is the incredibly volatile, high-stakes background against which the capture of Maduro has to be analyzed.
It suggests the capture wasn't just a random event, but maybe a desperate, immediate reaction to the network's exposure.
Given that background of systemic threat, it brings us right to segment 2, initial suspicions and the informant dynamic.
So the news breaks. Maduro, an internationally wanted figure, has been captured by U.S. forces. And Marcano's first reaction isn't, wow, what a great military operation.
No, his first reaction is deep-rooted suspicion. His initial hypothesis, which he says is rooted in his deep access to the Venezuelan intelligence database that details this network.
His first thought is that it's staged.
Pure political theater. He saw the entire event through the lens of internal network preservation, not external military action.
Okay, let's really analyze the motive for that. Why would you orchestrate something so massive, so politically risky, like capturing a head of state, just to potentially let him go later?
The sources are clear on this. The staging would serve one single, absolutely crucial objective:
Deniability.
creating deniability for the network's assets inside the U.S. The whole goal would be to manufacture a public story, a narrative, that suggests that certain highly placed people in the U.S. government—
The U.S. players he keeps referring to.
exactly, that they're not working in concert with Diosdado Cabello.
Who is widely seen as the true operational head of the Venezuelan network. The ruthless one.
So this becomes a proactive defense mechanism. The U.S. collaborators realize that Marcano's books, or maybe other intelligence leaks, have put their collusion at extreme risk of being exposed.
So they need a win. A big, public, undeniable win that shows they are actively fighting the Venezuelan regime.
Exactly. It allows them to publicly sever ties.
Yeah.
A staged capture gives them a political shield, gives them critical breathing room.
You can just imagine the sequence, right? The U.S. player is under fire for some suspicious activity. Suddenly, boom, the U.S. pulls off the biggest arrest in Venezuelan history.
And that U.S. player can now stand up and point to the arrest and say, how could I possibly be collaborating with Cabello? My own government just captured his #1 asset.
The level of trust required for that is just, it's incredible. You're talking about Cabello and these U.S. players essentially agreeing to lend their head of state to the enemy for a PR stunt.
It's a massive gamble. And Marcano notes that even the immediate footage of the capture looked very authentic. But he says that doesn't rule out the possibility that it was orchestrated somehow.
Well, it would have to look authentic. The level of authenticity needed for this kind of theater would be immense.
You'd have to convince the entire global community, rival intelligence agencies, and most importantly, the domestic political opposition inside the U.S. that the operation was 100% real.
This is theater on a truly geopolitical scale.
It is.
So with that huge initial suspicion in his mind, Marcano knows he needs some kind of external validation. He can't just run on his own theory.
So he consults his high-level source, his field informant.
And this informant is unique. This isn't just some low-level source.
No, based on the context, they operate deep within the Venezuelan power structure, likely very close to Diosdado Cabello himself.
And when Marcano asks about Cabello's behavior right after the capture, what does the informant say?
The informant's observation was incredibly telling. He said Cabello was playing it very close to the chest.
Okay, so what does that caution actually imply in terms of the network's internal operations?
It implies extremely high operational security.
Hmm.
Cabello was acting consistently in front of everyone, his staff, his military, the public, as if the invasion and capture were entirely legitimate and, frankly, devastating.
He's maintaining the facade of a real crisis.
He has to.
Yeah.
He's demonstrating high vigilance, operational continuity, and this behavior is perfectly rational, even if he knew it was staged.
Why?
Because Cabello would have to anticipate leaks, you'd have to anticipate counterintelligence measures from the U.S., and even betrayal from within his own ranks. He has to protect the ruse from his own people.
It's a counterintelligence measure. He's running an incredibly tight ship, assuming there are spies everywhere.
Which is a parallel Marcano actually draws to his own actions.
Yeah.
He mentions that when he realized he was under surveillance, he cut off contact with everyone to try and flesh out a mole. It's the same operational mindset.
But this is where the story takes a critical turn. This is the pivot.
It is. This is the moment that elevates Marcano's personal suspicion into a validated, formal intelligence analysis request.
Because usually, Marcano is the one pulling information from the field.
Always. And for the very first time, the informant asked Marcano a question.
That request is it's a massive indicator. It points to profound internal uncertainty.
The man closest to Cabello, who should know the truth. He couldn't trust his own eyes or his own sources.
He was in the dark.
Completely. The informant specifically asked Marcano to run predictive scenarios in his proprietary machine learning pipeline to check the reality of the situation.
Their human intelligence network had failed them.
Utterly. The informant could not confirm whether Maduro's capture was a brilliant, lightning-fast U.S. operation or a deeply complex Venezuelan stage play designed purely for internal U.S. political protection.
So the informant needed the atomic algorithm to resolve a critical intelligence gap.
Yes. And that single act, that demand for data analysis, it validates the immense power and reputation of Marcano's technology.
The uncertainty moved from just being Marcano's personal speculation to a critical demand for advanced analytical intervention from inside the regime itself. And that critical demand leads us straight into segment 3, the machine learning pipeline and its prediction.
Right, so Marcano takes the informant's request and he feeds it into his system. He's asking it the fundamental question, real or fake?
And he runs, a series of different scenarios in the pipeline.
He does. And the key procedural detail here, the thing that makes this so powerful, is that he set the pipeline to productive mode.
What does that mean exactly? Productive mode.
It's distinct from a passive analytical mode. In productive mode, the machine learning system is configured to actively learn from and incorporate real-time, unstructured external sources.
So news articles?
Specifically news articles and global reporting related to the capture.
Okay, so it's not just crunching the existing classified data he has from the Venezuelan database. It's actively comparing that secret knowledge against the emerging public narrative.
To find what? Inconsistencies, patterns, or in this case, a compelling alternative scenario that fits all the data points, both public and private.
And the output is this highly complex inference, a simulated prediction.
And Marcano is so careful to label it that way. It's a prediction, not a fact, because it's describing an event that hasn't been confirmed by external observation, but is analytically possible and probable based on the entire data architecture.
And this prediction describes a sequence of events designed specifically to deceive one party while simultaneously entrapping another.
But before it even reveals the core prediction, the pipeline does something fascinating. It references a precedent that it ingested from those news articles.
It uses historical context to model the feasibility of such a huge government deception. What was the parallel it drew?
The historical parallel it cited was the tricking of a drug trafficker named Ismail El Zambar by the DEA.
And the details of that case are important.
They're crucial because they established the methodology of the lure. El Zambar was convinced he was flying to a routine, maybe even a cooperative meeting, a neutral rendezvous point.
Only to be completely surprised by the DEA when his plane landed.
Exactly. So that precedent provides the structural template for the prediction. It shows that U.S. governmental agencies have a history, a successful one, of manufacturing situations to secure captures.
Using the pretense of a cooperative or staged action to lure a high-value target or their collaborators into a pre-planned, genuine arrest.
This historical data point solidified the core concept of the prediction, that the whole sequence with Maduro was orchestrated by one side to deceive the other. It's a deception within a deception.
It wasn't just a military op, it was a psychological operation.
With immense geopolitical consequences.
So according to this highly calibrated prediction, who were the architects? Who managed to pull off this level of strategic maneuver?
For that, Marcano says he consulted the pipeline's debug output.
So the raw analysis.
Right. And it identified the likely U.S. agencies involved in this counterintelligence operation. And it was clearly not a single agency acting alone. The complexity was just too high.
Who did it point to?
The output suggested the FBI, the Secret Service, the DEA, and the CIA were likely all working together. A comprehensive, multi-agency team.
It's very telling that the DEA is on that list.
It is.
given that Maduro is wanted primarily by the U.S. on narco-terrorism and drug trafficking charges.
That inclusion is a significant operational clue. The DEA provided the legal basis, the criminal mandate, for the real arrest.
While the FBI provided the domestic intelligence and counterespionage framework,
The CIA provided the foreign intelligence capability and reach, and the Secret Service. That's the interesting one.
yeah, why the Secret Service?
Their involvement might suggest the operation involved protecting the political integrity, or even the physical movement, of high-level U.S. officials who were involved in the handover process.
Wow. So the key takeaway here is that the very agencies that may have been previously compromised, or at least accused of collaborating with the network, are now the ones running this master operation against it.
Which brings us to segment 4. And this is really the conceptual centerpiece of the entire analysis, the mechanism of the Cabello sting.
And it operates on two completely distinct, contradictory realities that were somehow coexisting within the same operation.
Let's start with the first one. Let's really try to reconstruct Cabello's false reality, the lure.
Okay, what did Cabello think was happening?
The machine learning scenario suggests that Cabello was convinced he was an active participant in a mutual choreographed ruse. The purpose of this ruse was entirely political.
It was that theatrical separation for the benefit of his U.S. players.
Exactly.
But what convinced him this was a safe bet? What was the actual payoff for him to take such a massive risk?
The lure was based on exploiting the network's most immediate need, self-preservation. Cabello believed that by lending Maduro for a fake capture, he was giving the U.S. players, his collaborators in the U.S. government, a huge public, decisive win.
Which would allow those U.S. players to sever ties for appearance's sake, ensuring their political survival.
And, in the long term, ensuring their ability to continue facilitating the network's interests inside the U.S. Cabello saw this as a necessary temporary sacrifice, a strategic investment in his assets.
So the conversation was essentially the U.S. collaborators going to Cabello and saying, look, we're compromised, the heat is on, we need a massive visible win to get everyone off our backs.
If you give us Maduro for a little while, we can claim we took him down, we get our political cover, and then we quietly return him, and we all live to fight another day.
That captures the psychological transaction perfectly.
And the analysis from the pipeline suggests this deception was so deep, it likely required the compliance of Maduro himself.
So Maduro was in on it.
The pipeline suggests he might have been in on it too, consenting to a brief, probably comfortable detention. Maybe just a few months.
Under the firm promise that he would be returned right after a short time.
It's an absolutely unprecedented logistical maneuver, all designed to protect the integrity of the global network by sacrificing the perception of its leaders' freedom.
Which requires an almost suicidal level of trust in your collaborators. But this is the moment the double cross becomes fatal.
This is the pivot.
What was the reality that Cabello completely failed to perceive?
The pipeline concludes that the U.S. agencies executed the double cross flawlessly. The capture is very real.
Not staged.
Not staged. Cabello was manipulated into willingly surrendering a major internationally wanted fugitive. Remember, Maduro is wanted by the DEA on serious charges, all under the belief that the entire operation was a controlled, collaborative fake.
So Diosdado, who was running this complex counterintelligence game against his own people to protect the ruse,
Was simultaneously being played on a much higher level by his supposed allies in the U.S. government.
he personally delivered the most valuable asset of his entire regime directly into genuine, permanent custody.
The deception is perfectly summarized by the pipeline's core finding, which Marcano quotes. It's simple, but chilling. He thinks it's not real, but on this side, in reality, is real.
That's the core genius of the Maduro Gambit.
It is. The U.S. agencies allowed the U.S. players to believe they were facilitating a secret, illicit maneuver, the staging of an arrest. And that illicit maneuver became the perfect cover for a legitimate arrest.
And this loops all the way back to Marcano's initial suspicions, but with this horrifying twist for the network.
Yes.
Because the very act of coordinating the fake handover is what provides the damning evidence against the U.S. players.
Right. If U.S. players participated in the orchestration, if they set up logistics, provided timing, ensured the handoff location was secure, they are participating in a criminal conspiracy, regardless of what they believe the ultimate outcome would be.
The operation uses the network's own self-serving corruption against itself. The U.S. agencies didn't need to catch the U.S. players red-handed in a real drug deal with Cabello.
All they needed was for the U.S. players to agree to participate in the fake handover that was designed to protect the network.
The intelligence operation entrapped them using their own willingness to obstruct justice for personal gain.
It's brilliant.
Let's just focus for a second on the precision this would require from the U.S. agencies. You're talking about the FBI, DEA, and CIA all maintaining a completely opaque operational reality.
They're presenting one reality to Cabello and the U.S. players while simultaneously executing a completely different, legitimate criminal capture. This is a monumentally risky play.
One wrong move, one leak, and the whole thing collapses.
Which means it would require an extremely small, tightly controlled operational planning cell, the architects.
Yeah.
Few people who knew the true objective.
And they would have to be walled off entirely from everyone else involved.
Including, potentially, lower-level members of their own agencies who were just told to facilitate the logistics of what they thought was a different kind of operation.
The entire success of the Gambit hinged on isolating Cabello and the U.S. players, letting them believe they had operational control over the ruse.
Only to pull the rug out from under them at the last possible second, at the moment of capture, transforming the staged event into a very, very real one.
That level of deception control is what makes Marcano call this a potential historical masterstroke, which moves us right into segment 5, the masterstroke and damning evidence. If this prediction is even close to being true, Marcano's assessment is high.
Very high. He called it one of the best intelligence operations in history and a humbling scenario to see.
And it's because it achieves two strategic goals at the exact same time.
The first goal is the tactical victory. You successfully tricked Diosdado into giving up Maduro, a major DEA fugitive. That's the tangible, immediate win. You get your man.
But the second goal, the long-term strategic victory, is arguably even more important.
Dismantling the internal threat. Taking down the network inside your own house.
So what makes this scenario so potent? What makes the evidence so unavoidable for these alleged U.S. players?
Let's get into the legal implication of this damning evidence they created for themselves.
The implication of collusion is just, it's unavoidable. Because the evidence doesn't rely on their motive, it relies purely on their participation.
Explain that.
If a U.S. official participated in orchestrating the fake handover, if they provided intelligence, logistical support, or internal government approvals for the capture zone, they were actively facilitating a clandestine act.
An act designed to obstruct justice and protect a wanted fugitive.
Correct. Their actions are now on the record as direct participation in a criminal conspiracy, and it doesn't matter whether they knew the capture would ultimately become real or not.
Marcano's logic on this point is so powerful because it just cuts through any potential legal defenses. He asks the question, how can you say that you were not part of the network? It's the perfect question. If you help coordinate the handover of a wanted man, even if you believe he'll be quietly returned, you have fundamentally participated in obstruction of justice and conspiracy.
The fact that the U.S. agencies double-crossed everyone and turned the fake handover into a real one doesn't absolve the U.S. players of their initial corrupt intent.
Not at all. In fact, it's what exposes them. This is a devastating form of evidence because it's self-implicating.
They were exposed not by their failure to fight the Venezuelan regime, but by their willingness to cooperate in the fake fight.
The U.S. agencies used the U.S. players' own internal corruption, their willingness to compromise national security for political cover, to expose their systemic corruption. This legal trap is what makes the operation an absolute masterstroke against internal adversaries.
Okay, now we have to maintain our analytical neutrality here. The pipeline's prediction is incredibly compelling, but the source material is very clear. Marcano does not present this as gospel.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And we have to give robust consideration to the alternative scenarios that he himself mentioned and that the pipeline likely analyzed.
We absolutely must. While the machine learning pipeline clearly weighted the double cross as the most probable scenario, there were two other major alternatives. We need to explore the merits and the flaws of both of them.
Okay.
The first one, and it's arguably the simplest explanation, the invasion was just completely real. It was executed with overwhelming U.S. military strength, which allowed them to extract Maduro quickly and decisively. The simple explanation.
The merits of that are obvious. The U.S. military absolutely possesses the capability and the logistical prowess to execute an operation like that swiftly. It would minimize political fallout, minimize leaks. It's clean.
And in that scenario, Cabello's cautious behavior, playing it close to the chest, is just genuine shock and a focus on damage control.
Right. But the flaw in that theory is that it doesn't explain the alleged pre-existing collusion of the U.S. players, or what would have prompted the operation in the first place. It feels too simple a narrative for the com-player network dynamics Marcano is observing.
Okay, what's the second alternative?
The second alternative is that it was a genuine orchestration by Diosdado and Maduro. They willingly participated, but there was no fatal double-cross.
So it was purely theater, designed for deniability, and the U.S. agency simply cooperated without any deceit.
With the full intention of returning Maduro after a short period, just as promised.
This scenario addresses the deniability need. It addresses Cabello and Maduro's willingness to cooperate. The U.S. players get their political cover, the Venezuelan network stays intact.
But the critical flaw here is the current reality on the ground.
Maduro is still in custody.
Maduro is still detained. If this scenario were true, the return would have likely already been executed quietly. Or, if it failed, the failure to return him would have sparked massive, immediate, and very public retaliation from Cabello.
Which we haven't seen.
We haven't seen it at all. Cabello playing it close to the chest suggests ongoing uncertainty, or perhaps profound shock that the double cross actually occurred, not the outrage of a simple betrayal.
So the unique value of the machine learning pipeline, then, is that it didn't just model the inputs, it analyzed the outcomes.
Precisely. The fact that Maduro is still in U.S. custody, combined with all the pre-existing data on U.S. player collusion, forced the system to reject the purely staged scenario. It had to prioritize the Maduro Gambit, the double cross, as the most inferred and analytically satisfying explanation for all the observed facts.
It's the only model that explains the genuine arrest alongside the network's bizarre internal dynamics.
It addresses the geopolitical capture, the counterintelligence maneuver, and the internal betrayal all in one elegant, if terrifying, package. The machine learning model determined that the only way to reconcile the U.S. players' intent to help Cabello with the U.S. government's successful, permanent capture of Maduro was the intervening layer of deceit executed by the U.S. agencies themselves.
So as we try to synthesize all of this, we're left staring at this profound information asymmetry. The tension is just palpable.
It's a tension between field observation and predictive analysis.
On one side, you have the human element. You have the informant, operating in the shadow of Cabello, who can only confirm one thing, that Cabello is playing it close to the vest.
He's concealing his true plans, whether they were real or fake, from everyone. That's all human intelligence can tell us.
But on the other side, you have the technological element, the proprietary machine learning pipeline that just cuts through all that operational fog and predicts the existence of this massive multi-agency double cross.
An operation that targets not just a foreign head of state, but the traitors within.
This single prediction is just so incredibly dense. We've dissected how it simultaneously models geopolitics with the fall of Maduro,
Counterintelligence with the elaborate tricking of Cabello,
data analysis with the power and function of that atomic algorithm,
and network collusion with the precise surgical entrapment of the U.S. players. It's an entire strategic landscape distilled into one single simulated scenario.
And this entire incredibly complex structure brings us all the way back to the personal reality of Ronaldo Marcano.
His final safety observation is a perfect encapsulation of the irony of this whole situation.
He notes that if the U.S. agencies truly did pull off such a masterstroke against someone as high-level and as cautious as Diosdado Cabello, then it necessarily means they must be watching all this that is happening here in Katy.
All of it.
And that heightened state of surveillance, it ironically makes him feel paradoxically safer.
Why? Because the presence of such powerful active agencies, the FBI, CIA, DEA, Secret Service, running a major active operation that involves his neighborhood and a high-profile figure like Mueller.
It suggests they are actively controlling the information and security environment around him.
Their operation is so successful and so pervasive that he trusts it to deter the desperate network that he's exposing. His observation, if they pulled that off against Diosdado, it means that they must be watching all this. That's the ultimate testimonial to the effectiveness of the very operation the pipeline described.
His life is now protected as, collateral in an extremely well-managed, much larger intelligence game.
It's an incredible thought. He's essentially saying that his best protection from this corrupt global network is the ruthless competence of the very U.S. agencies that just trapped them.
We have covered, I think, every detail in the source material we have, from the specific addresses in Katy, Texas, to the functional architecture of this alleged algorithm.
And that profound level of strategic deception, the one the pipeline predicts, it raises a massive final question for you. the listener to consider?
We've established that the effectiveness of this operation relies on architects using the corrupt intent of the U.S. players to generate self-incriminating evidence against them.
But if that's the case, if U.S. agencies have successfully crossed the line into sophisticated entrapment to expose domestic enemies, what is the long-term price paid by the security state for achieving that victory?
Specifically, once the government establishes that it is willing to run these complex, long-term deceptions that blur the lines of legal and operational authority to expose its own citizens or officials.
What impact does that operational precedent have on trust, on future internal dissent, and on the integrity of its own intelligence operations going forward?
That level of genius deception might solve a corruption problem today.
But it creates a profound accountability problem for tomorrow.
Food for thought indeed, as the true aftermath of the Maduro Gambit continues to unfold. Thank you for taking this deep dive into this incredibly complex geopolitical puzzle with us.